Alright, so let's go ahead and get started on our business contacts application. The first thing we're going to do is set up Angular CLI. Okay, so this is the first time that we're using this in this course. And if you go to cli.angular.io, you can see that setting this up is incredibly easy. Okay, all we have to do is install it globally using npm. So as long as you have Node.js and npm, you should be able to do this. Alright, so I'm in my projects folder. We're going to first install it, and you want to make sure you add that G flag. That's going to make sure that it's installed globally so you can run it from anywhere. Okay, we're going to say Angular-CLI. Alright, so now we can generate an application using ng new and then naming it. So we're going to call this business contacts. And what that'll do is it'll create a new folder called business contacts and set up our application inside of it. Alright, so now we want to cd into that directory. And I'm also going to open it up in Visual Studio Code. So let me just open up a new window here. Alright, and we're just going to open up the folder. Alright. So if we look over to the side here, you can see we have an Angular 2 application, which looks a little different than what we've been working with the Quick Start. Okay, you'll notice some extra files. We have the Angular CLI JSON file, Angular CLI build.js. We also have a config folder that has some environment config files. Karma, which is a platform to test with, has some config files. And you'll notice that we don't have an app folder. The app folder is actually inside of the source folder. Okay, if we look in app, you can see that it already creates the core app component file. You can see where we have just the basic component decorator. We have our app component class, and we just have a title property that's set to AppWorks. Alright, and if we look in the index.html file, this looks pretty familiar. We have our app root directive right here. That's where the application will be inserted. Alright, now to run this, if we look at this over here, we can just do ng-serve. So let's go back to our command line and let's just do ng-serve. Okay, so it says that it's serving on port 4200. So we're going to go to localhost port 4200. And you can see that we're getting AppWorks. Okay, if we open the console, we have no errors. So it's as easy as that to set up like a boilerplate, I guess you could call it, using Angular CLI. So the next thing we want to do is we want to install Firebase and AngularFire2. So if you've used Firebase with Angular 1, chances are you probably used AngularFire, which is just a module that makes it really simple to use the two together. You don't need to, but it does make things a lot easier. So let's go ahead and Control-C and stop this server from running. And then we're going to say npm install, and we're going to add --save. And let's say AngularFire2. And we also want Firebase. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is install the typings for Firebase. So to do that, we can use the typings command, and we're going to say install, and then dt, and then the tilde character, which is to the left of the number 1, Firebase, and we're going to add --global and --save. Okay, so now that should be all set. And if we go and we look in typings and we look in this index.d.ts file, you can see that Firebase has been added. Now what we need to do is open up the Angular CLI build.js file that's in the root, and we have to add to this vendor npm files. We have to add AngularFire2 and Firebase. And I can actually pull up the documentation for this as well. Okay, so if we go down to installation and setup, okay, we've done this. We didn't install typings because that already was installed. We created a project, typings. Okay, so we're right here. We want this AngularFire2 and Firebase, so we're going to copy that and let's put a comma there and then paste that in. Alright, then we'll save that and let's go back to our command line here, and next thing to do is ng build. So let's try that. Alright, so you can see this message we're getting: running without elevated rights. Running Ember CLI as administrator increases performance significantly. And I think that should say Angular CLI, if I'm not mistaken. But since we're using this GitHub, this Git bash, we're not running it as administrator, which we probably should. So you can see that it did build the project successfully. But what I'm going to do is close out of this, and I'm going to just run the standard Windows command line as administrator. And you can't see my taskbar on the screen, but I'm just opening it as administrator. Okay, and then we're just going to go cd to projects / business contacts. And let's see, so we did the ng build. That built it into the dist folder. You can see it compiled it into there. So the next thing to do, you know what, let's try running ng serve. Okay, let's go, just let that load. Okay, we'll go back to port 4200, and it looks like everything's okay still, so we have no errors, which is good. So in the documentation here, now it's telling us to go to the system config ts file, which is in the source folder, so right here, and it says modify the file like below. Alright, and your documentation might be a little different depending on when you're watching this. So you can see we have the constant map, and right here it's blank, it's just any. So what we want to do is grab that, put that there. And let's see, packages, we want to grab that and put that here. Alright, AngularFire2 and Firebase need to be mapped with the system.js for module loading. So we need to do this to be able to import them like this. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that. And then we're going to open up our main.ts file, which is right here. Now, in order to set this up, we need to get some information from our Firebase. So we're going to go over to firebase.google.com, and you just want to sign up. It's free. There are some premium packages, but you can sign up for free. Log in and then go to your console. And we want to create a new project. Let's call it business contacts. That might have to be unique. I'm not sure though. Let's create it. If you can't use that name, just pick one. Doesn't really matter. And then let's see, we're going to go to, and no, we just want to click on the app name up here, and then let's say add Firebase to your web app, and then that's going to give us all that information. Alright, so let's grab this line, we need to add that. Okay, so we're just importing Firebase providers from AngularFire2, and down here, let's just, let's see, we're going to grab everything that's in this array right here, so from the brackets, and then we're just going to put that as a second parameter to our bootstrap function. Okay, so API key we can get right here. auth domain. Yours will be different. Database URL, nice and easy. You gotta love when everything's just spelled out for you. Alright, so that looks good. Firebase, oh, this is, I need this. Alright, so that should do it. Let's go ahead and save that. And let's see. So now in the app component TS file, we need to import it down there as well. So let's go to app component TS, and we just want to import it there. And then down here we have to inject it into the constructor. So we're gonna I'll just type it. So we don't have a constructor yet. Okay, so we're gonna say, what is it, AF colon, and it doesn't have to be AF, you can do whatever you want, but let's see, AngularFire. Alright, so let's go ahead and save it and make sure that we don't get any errors or anything. So I'm actually going to restart the server just in case. Alright, so we'll go back to our application and reload, and it still works and there's no errors. Perfect. Alright, so now we're going to go to the console, Firebase console, and go to database, and we want a collection, so we can just click in this box right here and say items and go. And then what we're going to do is just import some data. So I'm going to say import JSON, and you should have a resources folder in your section files, and we want to choose items.json, and this is just for an example. This doesn't have anything to do with the actual business data that we're going to use. Let's say import, and now we just have a couple items here. Okay, so now let's go back to our application, and we're going to use this Firebase list observable. So we're going to add right here a property called items, and let's set that to Firebase list observable, and we're going to say this can be any kind of data or any kind of array. And let's see, down here we'll say this dot items equals underscore AF, or just AF, whatever you put here. Okay, so AF dot database dot list, and then we want slash items. Okay, and then we're just going to do a console log of this dot items. Then we're going to go into our app component HTML file, and let's put a UL here. We're going to use ng4 to iterate through the items. We'll say let item of items, and we're also going to add an async option here for asynchronous. Alright, and then inside here we'll put our li, and let's say item.name. Save it. Okay, so if we look down here, permission denied at slash items. Client doesn't have permission to access the data. Okay, so that's a default. That's the default behavior. What we need to do, we're going to go to auth, and we're going to, I'm sorry, not auth, go to database and rules, and then these by default, we're going to our auth not equals null, basically saying that we can't read or write. What I'm going to do is change these to true. And then we'll, it doesn't look like there's a save button. Oh, publish. Okay, so those are published. Let's go ahead and reload. And now you can see we're fetching the items from Firebase. Okay, so that's all set up. Now, in the next video, what we'll do is set up a service to interact with Firebase so that we can grab contacts, and then we'll make it so that we can add them, edit them, delete them, and so on. Okay, so that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.